All right, our Unit 2 test. All right, I've decided to do it in a Google Forms, this test, rather than on your Pearson. That way it gets auto-graded. I don't have to go back through and weed through and do points based on Pearson does not let me make questions worth more than 1 point. So like, for instance, when you have like a pull down menu and it says like, Hannah was correct because, absolute values are how far from zero, and you have to do those pull down menus. It only lets me make that worth 1 point, and you have to get every piece of it correct. I wanted to be able to have multiple pieces where it was correct, but also like each one was worth 1 point. And so by doing that, I'm going to do it on a Google Forms, okay, like a Google quiz. So you'll go through and you'll work it on your Google quiz, and then I will show it to you what it looks like here at the end. But I want to walk through the sections of it with you here, okay? So your Unit 2 test is based on two big principles, okay, from our main Unit 2, right? We have our unit rate boxes, and we have proportional relationships. Okay, so unit rate boxes, first and foremost, is the idea of being able to build and populate and label and solve a unit rate box. Okay, so I want to remember our 4 steps with our unit rate boxes. Okay, we want to build a unit rate box. Okay. After we build it, we want to label it with our two items being compared, right? So if we're talking about, someone makes this much money per hour, our two labels are going to be hours and money, right? Okay. After that, we want to populate it with info from the problem. Okay, and I'm going to bold these because we talked about these being our, we had these written on the board for so long. Okay, populate it with info from the problem. And the last one is we're going to solve it. Solve it for mixing boxes. Okay, so we're building it, we're labeling it, we're populating it, we're solving it. Okay. So unlike last unit as well, I'm going to leave this review up for you guys to use if you'd like. Okay, I know some people wanted it used, so. But again, we're looking at building our box. Okay, we're looking at labeling. Let me see, drawing here. Just a straight draw here. There it is. Oops. So we're looking at, money and hours. Okay. We're looking at populating it. So say he makes $8.50 an hour, or $8.50 every 2 hours, and we want to know what he makes in an hour, per hour. So we've drawn our box, we've labeled it, we've populated it with information, and now we can solve for this piece here. Okay. So remember, when you have information and you're trying to get to your unit rate, you're going to be dividing by whatever's here, right? Okay, so in this instance, this would be $4.25. So he makes $4.25 an hour. And it may come back and ask you, like, given that, what will he make if he works 9 hours? Okay, remember when you're going from a unit rate to a regular piece, some other piece of information, you're going to be multiplying by whatever you're trying to find. Okay, so the same thing happens here, times 9. So we get 38.25. Okay, so he makes 38.25 in 9 hours. So going from information to a unit rate, you're dividing. And going from a unit rate to information, you're multiplying. Okay, and I'm going to, whoops. I'm going to put that on here for solving. Okay. From info, oops. Let's go not bold. Bold, there we go. Okay, Word. There we go. From info to a unit rate, you're dividing. And from a unit rate to a solution, you're multiplying. Okay, right? So if you have, by the way, if you have questions about anything that I'm posting on here, feel free to like holler at me in the chat and I can clarify anything. Okay. So again, if you're going from info that's provided to a unit rate, generally you're dividing down to figure out your unit rate. Okay. Or if you have a unit rate and you're trying to find a solution from something, you're generally going to be multiplying. Okay. Just like we see right here. Whoop, where'd my box go? There we go. Okay. Right. If I go from info to a unit rate, I divide. If I go from a unit rate to a solution or the other piece of information that I need to know, I'm multiplying. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit. Oops. Multiply. Sorry. Okay. Let's talk about proportional relationships. Okay. So what makes things proportional? Okay, we've talked about this over the last 2 weeks. Okay, when you have a piece of information, when you're looking at, like, for instance, these boxes, okay, when you're looking at equations, when you're looking at charts or unit rate boxes, and you're looking at graphs, okay, when you look at them, how do you look at them or work with them and determine that they're proportional or not? Okay, so we're going to start with an equation first and foremost. We look at these ones that are proportional. Y equals kx, y equals 10x, y equals 1/2 x, okay? And we look at these ones that are non-proportional. Y equals 4x minus 7, y equals x plus 6, okay? We notice what these ones have in common, right? They have this addition or subtraction piece to them, okay? So for equations, it needs to just be in the form y equals kx form, okay? We also want no addition or subtraction. Okay, this is the most important piece right here. Y equals kx. Okay. And when we talk about y equals kx, k is the constant of proportionality. Okay. Okay. K is the constant of proportionality. Okay. So what that means is when you have an equation that looks like this, whatever takes the place of k, so if this is y equals, so like on this one, for instance, y equals 10x, the constant of proportionality is 10, whatever fits into that spot, okay? And you're going to have some problems like that on your test where it basically says, here's an equation, what's the constant of proportionality, okay? It does not matter what's in there, okay? It could be y equals 10x, where the constant of proportionality is 10. It could be y equals 1/3 x, where the constant of proportionality is 1/3. It could be y equals px, where the constant of proportionality would be p, okay? Whatever takes the place of k, all right? So for charts and boxes, looking at like equations or charts and boxes, unit rate boxes like this one down here, where x and y, okay? Basically, you're just checking, does the same thing happen from x to y in all columns? Okay, if yes, proportional. If no, non-proportional, okay? And we see that in some of our equations here, okay? Like looking at this one right here. From x to y, I'm multiplying by 2. Okay, do I multiply by 2 in all of the columns? Yes, I do. So it was proportional. In this one, I'm multiplying by 3 in all but the end column. The end one does not make sense, so it makes it non-proportional. Okay, so remember, no is non-proportional, and it must be all columns. I'm going to bold that because that's important. A lot of people will just do like, okay, 3, 3, okay, looks good. You got to go through all the columns. Okay, and I am telling you, yep, I'll go a little slower. Once I get all this up here, guys, I'll leave it up here for like a couple minutes so you guys can copy it all down. And again, this sheet that we're working on, I am just going to put up on the Google Classroom, so you will have access to it as we test too. Okay, this main idea sheet. The piece that has all the problems on it will not be there, as usual. You have to kind of hang with me as we work on this review. But this main piece thing will be up there for you to use, okay? And again, it must be all columns. And the reason I bold that, and I'm even going to underline it because it's so important. So many people will try to just, okay, look at the first couple columns, they're good. I will tell you on the test, I intentionally make some where the last column is the only one that is not proportional. Okay. Because, well, actually, I don't know if I did that this year. Let me look at it. Maybe. Okay, the last column or the last couple columns. Yeah, there is at least one of those on there. Okay, so you need to be diligent about going through and looking at each column, all of them, not just the first couple and say it looks good. All columns. Okay. All right, and finally we have graphs. Okay, we look at like graphs like this, or like this, or like this. And graphs should be the easiest one, right? It's just an eye check. Is it a straight line? And it goes through the origin, which means it hits 0, 0. Okay. So we can look at these ones that we have here. Straight line? No, not proportional. Straight line? Yes. Through the origin? Yes, proportional. Straight line? Yes. Through the origin? Yes, proportional. Through the origin? No, not proportional. Through the origin? Yes. Straight line? No, not proportional. Okay, and I'm going to put that it must be both. Okay, must be both. It can't hit just one of those two categories. It's got to be both. Okay. It's got to be both. Okay, so this is your, let me make it a little smaller so you guys can zoom out a little bit here so you can see. There we go. This is your main idea sheet for the test. Okay, and again, this will be available on the Google Classroom. You'll be able to pull this up and look at it as you test. Okay, again, the individual questions will not be up when we cover the individual and talk about the example problems and stuff, but this will all be on your test. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute or two here for those of you that are taking notes and taking this down to go ahead and do that. Okay. As I said, I think this is an easier test than the last one, just because there's a lot of questions where it just talks about, rules and policy. It talks about, equation form. It talks about what does a graph look like that's proportional. It talks about, solving with a unit rate box, things like that. So I think this is a really good outline for what it looks like to be successful, I think, on this test. Okay. All right. Okay, about another minute, and then I'm going to move on and start talking about individual questions here. Okay. And again, if you don't get this all down, that's okay. Remember, I will go back to it. As with our first test review, don't feel like you need to rush to get everything written down. I will not leave this Zoom until everyone is satisfied with the amount of notes that they want to take from each question. So if you need me to go back to questions at the end, or you need me to scroll to something that needs to be jotted down, I will make sure that you get that before you log off. So don't feel like you need to be pressured or you need to have anxiety about getting everything written down. I will make sure that everyone gets everything they need from this before I leave here today. So we have that extra hour or so. So I will make sure everybody gets all the info. So don't worry too much about it if you're, yeah. So. Yes, this piece right here will be in the Google Classroom. Okay, this piece that says unit test review with our main ideas. Okay, this piece right here where I start on problem number 1 will not be. So we're going to go over here on live Zoom, talk about the questions and how to approach them and things to remember. If you want those, you got to take them down here on the live Zoom. But this piece right here, this main ideas, unit rate boxes, what makes things proportional, equations, charts, graphs, this will be up on the Google Classroom. So you will have this exact form to use on the test if you'd like. Okay. Okay. Ruben, we're still going to go over the test. These are the main ideas, but we're still going to walk through the test and say like, okay, this is what this problem looks like, and this is what this problem looks like. I like Ruben's got a kind of a go-getter attitude. He's like, let's do this. Okay, so let's look at some of these questions. Okay, let's start on number 1. Okay, so number 1, actually, let's talk about 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Okay, this will be a lot quicker than my last review, question-wise, because a lot of questions are really similar. Okay, number 4, number 5, and number 6. All deal with what does an equation of a proportional relationship look like? Okay, so you got to remember that y equals kx, where k is the constant of proportionality. Okay, so the example I would give is if I had y equals 50x, the constant of proportionality is 50. Okay. So that's what you're looking for. 1 through 6 are all really dealing with what does an equation of a proportional relationship look like? Okay, there'll be some of them that say, let's see, some of them that say in what form is an equation that relates to proportional quantities? Okay, and you'll have to give the equation and what letter equals the constant of proportionality. Okay, it'll get some, then there's 2 that are going to give you equations and it's going to say, what is the constant of proportionality here? Then there's going to be a couple that say, is this equation proportional? Yes or no. Okay, there's 2 of them that are just yes or no questions. Question 5 and question 6 are just yes or no. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All right. Okay, question 7. It's just a plug and solve. Okay, so for instance, if I have y equals that same, I'm going to use that same, actually, let's, yeah. If y equals 50x, And it says, what is the value when x is 3? Plug 3 in for x and solve. Okay. So for instance, what is the value of this equation when x equals 3? You just plug 3 in for x and solve. So 50 times 3 would be 150. Okay. That's all you're doing on number 7. You're just plugging in and solving. Okay. Plugging in and solving. All right, number 8, you're going to need to create 2 unit rate boxes. And number 8 says, Sarah used so many cups of cheese in a dish that serves so many people. Amy used so many cups of cheese in a dish that serves so many people. How much more cheese is in one serving of Sarah's dish? Find unit rates for both people to help you solve. Okay, so you need to create 2 unit rate boxes to find unit rates for both girls. Okay, once you have that, you're going to compare unit rates. Okay, so for instance, if Sarah uses 50 cups of cheese that serves 50 people, her unit rate would be 1 cup per person. Okay, if Amy used 50 cups of cheese for 25 people, and you divided that down, her unit rate would be 2 cups per person. So if I asked you how much more cheese is in one serving of Sarah's dish, or, and this would be backwards, but you would subtract 2 from 1, and it would be, okay, she has 1 more cup per person. Okay, so you're comparing their unit rates by subtracting. You might want to underline the fact that you're going to need a separate unit rate box for each girl. Okay. The interesting thing is these problems are not numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're going to have to make a note of that. So you might want to put Sarah and Amy. Okay, that way the problems are not numbered on the Google form. I will see if I can change that. Okay, yeah, I can just change it at the beginning of the question, so that's fine. So I will make that change. Okay. Okay, number 9. All right. Okay. Number 9 is you're figuring out. It's given you. Okay, it gives you a table. It's asking you, is it proportional? Okay. So you're going to need to figure out what's happening from X to Y. Okay. It must, so whatever is happening, that's your constant of proportionality. Okay. And remember, it must be all columns. Okay. So when we look at like this one, for instance, okay, what's happening from X to Y? Well, I'm multiplying by 2. So my constant of proportionality here is 2. Okay. On this one, what's happening from X to Y? Well, I'm multiplying by 3, but not on all of them. So there is no constant of proportionality. Okay. So on this one, you're going to have three options. It's either going to be, yes, my constant of proportionality is this. Yes, my constant of proportionality is this. Yes, my constant of proportionality is this. Or no, they are not proportional. Because when something isn't proportional, it does not have a constant of proportionality because it's not constant, right? They're all different, okay? So you have to determine, is it proportional? Once you do that, if it is proportional, you're going to answer, yes, it is proportional, and tell me what it is. Or if it's not proportional, you'll put, no, it's not proportional. Okay. Number 9. Okay. So number 8 and number 10 are extremely similar. Okay, so if you want to go up here and just go comma 10. Or if you want to write them back down, okay, I'm going to change this back to both girls. Because on 10, there are 2 girls. It says, Danielle earns this much for this many hours of yard work. Mackenzie earns this much for this many hours of yard work. Who earns more money per hour? Okay. So 10 is also very similar to number 8. You're finding the 2 unit rates for the girls. Okay. And number 11 is also involved with that. 11 says, how much more does Danielle or Mackenzie earn per hour than the other one? So again, you're going to compare them by subtracting to figure out which girl makes more. If one girl makes $15 an hour and one girl makes $13 an hour, your answer for number 11 is $2 more per hour, or $2 per hour more. Okay, you're just comparing how much they make. Okay. All right, number 12. So number 8 and number 11, number 10 and 11 are very similar. Okay. All right, number 12 says, at the nearest wholesale store, a number of bags of bulk cereal cost this much. At this rate, how much would so many bags, etc., or X bags of bulk cereal cost? Enter your answer in the box. So on number 12, you're creating a full unit rate box. Okay, you need to find the unit rate for the cereal, then use that to solve. Okay, so you're going to be using a full unit rate box. Okay, so what that means, I can pull it open here in Paint so that I can paste it into this. Okay, you're going to be creating a full unit rate box. Okay, where you have cereal and you have money. Okay, and for instance, cereal, say it costs, say 5 bags of cereal costs $50. You're going to find that 1 bag of cereal costs 10, and you're going to use that to find for 10 bags of cereal. Okay, so you're creating a full unit rate box. Let me copy and paste this into our Word doc here. Too big. Oh, make it smaller. There we go. Okay. Full unit rate box. It should be 8 boxes. Because you're going to need one for information that you know. You're going to need one for your unit rate, and you're going to need one to solve the problem. Okay. It's a pretty straightforward problem compared to like some of the ones that we've had. It gives you an amount and a number. You're going to need to divide it down to find a unit rate. Then you need to take that unit rate and multiply it out to figure out your solution. Okay. Okay. That's actually 13 as well. 13, you're creating a full unit rate box. 13 says the relationship between X and Y is proportional. When X is one number, Y is another number. What is X when Y is a certain number? So you're going to need to create a unit rate box. You're going to figure out how much y there is for every x, and then use that to solve for when y is a certain amount. Okay, so you're going to find a unit rate. So again, find the unit rate and then use to solve 12 and 13. Okay. All right. All right. And again, don't be miffed if I'm going too fast. I will go back and make sure that you get caught up on every question or every note that you need or have questions on. Okay. All right, let's see. 14, 15, 16. Okay, this one is 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, 14, 15, 16, 17, you are using reciprocal multiplication in unit rate boxes to solve. Okay, so in these ones, you're going to be solving using unit rate boxes. However, they are involving fractions. So you're going to be using those fractions to help flip and solve. Okay. The first one says Henry's making corn grits that calls for a certain amount of cups of corn every day. And for every certain amount of cups of water, there's a certain amount of cups of corn. How much water will he be used if he uses a certain amount of corn? Okay. So let's look at this. Okay, so he makes corn and water. Okay, if he's saying 1/5 cups of corn grits for every 1/8 cup of water, okay, and they want to know for every cup of water how much corn grit, or every like one, they want to know like 1.5 cups. Okay, so we need to figure out a unit rate, which then in turn will help us solve for our solution. Okay, so again, we need to go, we're multiplying by reciprocals, right? 8/1. So if we multiply by it there, we got to multiply it by it here, 8/1. Okay. Okay, we end up with 8/5. Okay, so then over here, if we have 1.5, you might need to turn this into an improper, right? 3/2. Like, okay, what do you multiply by? You multiply it by 3/2 to get that, right? So this would be like times 3/2. So you're multiplying this by 3/2. So you might get like 24/10 here. Okay. So using reciprocal multiplication. I'm going to copy and paste this in as well. You know what? I might just include this whole thing on your Google Classroom. I don't feel like it's crazy informative. I might include this as well. You never know. Okay. All right. And that's pretty true for 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay. 15 says Kelly's knitting a scarf. It took her blank hours to knit blank feet on the scarf. What's her unit rate in feet per hour? So you're just finding a unit rate. Number 16, Youssef typed a 36-word paragraph in a certain amount of time. What's his typing speed in words per hour? You're just using reciprocal multiplication to find a unit rate. And 17, she walked this much in this much time. What did she walk? So you're just finding unit rates, okay? I would say 14 is the toughest of these three. Oh, 4, excuse me. 15, 16, 17. You're only finding unit rates. Okay. 14, you're finding a unit rate, then using it to solve a problem. So you're going to have 8 boxes probably. These ones will only be 6 boxes probably. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay, and 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Let's see here. I don't think there's that many. So 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, there's 25, 26. No, wait, that's not right. Let's see here. 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, 25. Okay. So all these problems deal with graphing. Okay. 19 through 25 deal with what does a proportional relationship look like? Okay. You also want to remember ordered pairs. Represent a place on the graph. Okay. So for instance, 2 comma 5 means right 2 and up 5, right? That the first number means right and the second number means up. Okay. So there's going to be your first problem, number 19, talks about which of these graphs is proportional and goes through a certain point. The number 20 gives you a graph of like tennis balls and the number of balls in a tennis can. And it asks you what the point represents. Okay. And you're going to have multiple selections. Let's see. Number 21 says it's giving you like a bunch of different information and you have to pick the graph that represents that. Okay, and what those points represent. And the last 2 questions are about a bottle capping factory. And you have to look at the graph and identify like what's actually happening. Okay, and remember, to find the constant of proportionality on a graph without a 1 showing, divide any y by x. Okay. So for instance, if you had a graph where the graph like, let me use paint again. Okay, if you have a graph where you have this line that goes like this. Okay, and you have a point like right here that's 10. Oops. Oops. 10, and you have a point right here that's 50. Okay, and you can see that that point exists on the graph. And I ask you, what is the constant of proportionality? We're just looking at 50 divided by 10. So you're So 5 is your constant of proportionality because you're finding a spot on the graph, dividing your y by your x. I will copy paste that in here. Okay. So you're going to have to do that on a couple of them. It's going to give you a graph and it's going to say, what's the constant of proportionality here? Okay. And what does that constant of proportionality mean? So in this instance, if this was like days and this was miles walked, the constant of proportionality of 5 would mean that in one day I would walk 5 miles, right? So you got to pay attention to what's labeled on your graphs. Okay. I'm deliberately on one of the questions trying to cross you up about what's happening in the graph because I want you to pay attention to how they're labeled. Okay. Is the graph labeled as seconds or minutes or hours or days? Okay. So there's one of them where you have 9 possible answers. There's 3 different constant of proportionalities I give you, but they all relate to different pieces of info. So make sure you read the whole solution that you select, because there's going to be 3 or 4 of them that look really similar. You know, the constant of proportionality was this, and it means this per minute. It means this per second. It means this per hour. Okay. You need to make sure that you have that down, that you're picking the correct one. Okay. Don't get it right and then miss it because you were too lazy to read the whole question. Okay. And the last question just asks you, what is the point? What does this point mean in the real world? Okay. So like they give you a point on the graph and they say, what does it actually mean? So they give you like 50, 100, and they say, okay, that means it caps 50 bottles in 100 hours. Okay. So they want to know what that place means. Okay. All right. So that is the main piece of your, or all the main pieces of your test. Okay. I tried to group them all together on this test so that they were all kind of similar. You're kind of doing the same thing. 1 through 6, you're working through constant of proportionality equations. Okay. Through 7 as well. 8 through 17, you're kind of working on equations and unit rate boxes and fractions. And then 19 through 25, you're working on graphs. Okay. I kind of tried to section them out so they would be a little easier to work through. You wouldn't have to constantly be jumping back and forth on those. Okay. Let's save this. Okay. So at this point, if you have questions about this, you can stay on. If you need me to further answer or you need me to pull up any of the equations that we have here, I'm more than happy to do that. Or you need to see any of the notes that are here either, I'm happy to do that. Okay. It's interesting that only 18 of you guys are here on the review. I will guarantee that this group right here, as an average, does better on the test than the group that is missing. Okay, I will almost guarantee that. Okay. There is also going to be an extra credit assignment given out like last time. We didn't do the mid-topic one this unit because of how short the unit was. So there's going to be a 20 problem Excel that deals with extra credit where every problem is 1% extra credit for the test, just like last unit, but it's twice as big. Okay. So that will be available at the end of the day, at the end of the period here today as well. So you can actually go through and work through that extra credit before you even take the test. So you could be 20% ahead on the test before you even take it next week. Okay. So I would encourage you, both your extra credits will be available at the end of the class here. I'll get those put into your Skyward and put into your Google Classroom if they're not in Skyward, like that maze thing for your quiz. I would encourage everyone to go through and work through those if you're done with all your Excels and things like that before you even start on the test. Okay. Okay, again, if you need me to pull up any of these questions so you can review them, you can stay on and I will do that in the chat. Otherwise, get caught up on your Excels, be ready for the test, bring your notes, be ready to go. Okay, good luck, everybody. No worries, Brent. You're all good. I wish I could have all three here, but I'm not sure why it won't let me. Tell you what, I'm going to make this like smaller so that the whole thing will fit. How about that? There we go. Now you can see the whole thing. There's a graph down here, but yeah, there we go. All right, so I need to stop our video